Good morning, crafty crafters. It is the second week of January now. I posted a picture last night of me cross stitching in front of the fire, and it garnered a whole lot of questions about my parking method. So I figured I would do a short post on what I'm doing. I always tell people, do what makes you happy. There's no right or wrong way to craft. It's what your preference is. So what I've got is a piece on my tapestry frame, prepped and ready to go. You'll see here that I have the area that I'm working on the frame right here. It's started. I'm actually working on this strip. This area right here is completed. You'll see I have various colored bobbins with the thread wind on. Mostly this system is because the piece that I'm working on, which is a Teresa Wetzler, often uses two colors. So you can see right here, I've got a symbol, which in this case is the H, and then the two DMC floss colors. So that is to help me so I don't have to keep referring to the color list, which is very extensive and long. For this piece, I can just look at the card, go reference my thread organizer. I didn't want to create a second thread organizer when doing this piece. I'm going to zoom in just a second. So you'll see here that I have marked my canvas with a couple of pinpoints. I did use a water soluble pen for this. Always test your fabric when you're doing anything. But I did test this before I marked the pattern. I've seen people use Flexeril pens. I know they can come back in cold weather, so I can get cold where I live, so I don't. So I use water soluble ink pens. This is the particular one I'm used. Fine Lawn Marc Bigon. It's very, very fine point pen, which is needed because this is 28 count fabric. So in parking, you kind of want to have your fabric gridded so you know particularly where to park the yarn. It makes it a little easier. So I've got two areas where my threads are parked. Now parking, I don't know who developed it, but it's an idea of placing your thread and keeping your thread on your project while you're working on it until you're ready to pick that thread up in the next spot. I think while you're actively stitching, it doesn't matter which hole you come in, either the bottom hole or the top corner hole, but when you park it, it is imperative that you park the thread in exactly the same hole of the cross stitch. So in this case, I always park it in the bottom left hole, so the stitch will be above it, and that is so you can identify it in case your floss identifier, if you don't use bobbins, you can know where to go in your pattern to find that particular symbol. Now in this case I'm working from left to right because my center point was right here. After I do this, I'll actually flip it and I'll work the other side. This part of the canvas is intentionally blank, so there won't be anything up here, but there will be full coverage below here until the end of the piece. So what we've got here is, let's start with what I call the valet line. So this area right here is the threads that I'm actively working in this area, which is my focus area. So the threads to the left, because I'm moving from left to right, are my valet lines. So one thing I will tell you when I'm doing a focused area of design, I always work on the furthest parked thread first, and I move my way across, so that way I can kind of have as clear as possible canvas area. So when I start a parked area, all my threads are to the left, and then I will slowly move them right. So I'm really at the end of this section, so you see just the parked threads that were right at the edge of the piece here. But you'll see in the other area which I have to go forward, we have some farther parked threads. That's because they don't start until that spot right there, and so likely when I when I move to the next area, I will start this thread first because it's the furthest to the right, and then I'll keep marching it across the fabric. So that's like the valet parking. That's the threads that are about to be worked into this part of the section of the canvas. This is short-term parking. These are threads that are actively going to be worked in the next section. They're parked to that stitch spot in the next section as I'm working again the canvas from the left to the right. So you can see this particular $sign is the furthest to the right. So if assuming none of these threads were going over here, this would be the thread I would work first, and then I would just find the next thread that was the furthest right over, which looks like to be this one, and I work that one. So I'm again working the furthest threads out, moving them across the canvas. This is this is long-term parking. So these are threads that are not in the next section I'm going to work. Okay, I have dropped them below the canvas area. This is going to be a full coverage area, guys, so I'm not worried about, like, will somebody see these holes? Nobody's going to see it. Sometimes I see people hang the threads off the canvas. I just am using the bottom bar of my frame bar to rest them on, but theoretically you could hang them over the edge. A lot of people don't use the bobbins. I do. It's just for my convenience. These will not be carried over into the next area. You can see there's kind of two groupings. That's because these threads right here were used in this section. These threads ended in this section. I haven't decided if I'm going to carry them over behind the fabric or I will snip and cut them and then carry them over. I just haven't decided yet. Either could work. I don't know how far I have to carry them over. I didn't focus on that. I just know they're not in that next block. I take a tapestry piece like an elephant, one small bite at a time. So this particular card here that's off by its little lonesome is because that's the color I'm actively working. Now people ask, what do you do if the thread's too short? Well, if it's too short, I'm not going to carry it over to the next block. I'll just snip it, end it, and start with a fresh. But I have what I call the parking deck. The parking deck is this little ring that's hanging on the side of my frame. This is a bobbin of prepared floss. I did have this. I ran out of floss at the end of a section. I didn't need it actually on the next section, or I did. I haven't started it yet. And so I just temporarily, after I've re-threaded the bobbin, put it on the parking deck until I need it again. I'll do the same thing with this. I know already this piece is very short. I'm not going to carry it over to the next area, but I also know I will need this. So I'll just put this back on the parking deck holder, and it'll hang there until I'm ready to use it. Easy peasy squeezy for me to find. So what do you do if your thread is too short to be wound on the bottom? How do you check it? Well, there's a couple things. First of all, you don't necessarily need the bobbins, because if you've parked it right and it's in that bottom right corner, you'll be able to reference it in your piece, the symbol it is. But if you're actively working it like I am, you could simply just put the bobbin in the vicinity of the thread. I know that I only have one empty bobbin. Here it is, so I know it's this thread. The other thing you could do is take a small piece of tape and tape it to the bobbin, just so it wouldn't lose it. I mean, none of us are using this last inch of thread anyways for anything other than securing a piece, so it's not going to hurt your thread to do that if you're going to do that. Downsides of this method, obviously I'm not rolling my piece up anytime soon, guys, so you can't roll it with the bobbins on there. You don't necessarily need the bobbins. Again, it's just an identifier for me, so I don't have to look at my thread list. Questions or comments? Can these get tangled up? Yes. Yeah, it can. I'm not going to say it can't get tangled up. People say, oh, it's messy. I think it's all a matter of preference. But, all I have to do is follow the thread to the bobbin and gently untangle it, and it's fine. I'm not getting knots because I don't have a huge long end. Not getting knots. They're not getting tangled in that method. So, I just kind of follow it as I go through. But, again, it's all a matter of preference. So do what makes you crafty happy.
This works well for me, and it's a time saver for me, but it may not be for you. If you have any questions or comments, throw them in the comment section, and I will be happy to get back to you. But otherwise, happy crafting.